Every year, thousands of people make the leap. They sell the furniture. They donate the excess. They untie the lines and move aboard the boat they spent months researching, planning, and dreaming about. They post the photos. They feel the freedom. They think, finally, this is it. This is the life. And then, somewhere around the 6-month mark, something shifts. Not for everyone. Not even for most people, but for a meaningful number of people who made this exact leap with their whole heart. Something changes. The dream does not disappear, but the reality starts to weigh on it in ways they did not fully anticipate. And quietly, sometimes suddenly, they make a decision. They go back. Today we are talking about why, not to discourage anyone from this life. Because the people who find their footing out here will tell you it is worth everything it costs. But because the honest version of this conversation is the one that actually helps people make the right decision for themselves. These are the real reasons some people quit boat life after 6 months. And if you are considering this life yourself, understanding them might be the most valuable thing you watch today. Stay with me all the way through, because the last reason on this list is the one that surprises people most, and the one that nobody in this space ever talks about. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let us get into it. Before we get into the reasons, let me say something important. Quitting is not failure. The people who try this life and decide it is not for them are not weak. They are not naive. Most of them are thoughtful, capable people who made a genuine attempt at something most people never have the courage to try at all. The decision to leave is often just as brave as the decision to go. But there are patterns, consistent reasons that show up again and again when people talk honestly about why they left. And those patterns are worth understanding before you commit, not after. The first reason people quit is one that sounds obvious in hindsight, but blindsides almost everyone who goes through it. The boat becomes a second job, and they never signed up for that. Here is how it starts. You move aboard with a vision of slow mornings and freedom and life lived at your own pace. The boat is the vehicle for that vision. The boat is supposed to serve the life, but boats have other ideas. Within the first few weeks, most new liveaboards encounter something they did not fully internalize during the research phase. A boat is a complex mechanical system sitting in a corrosive environment that is actively trying to destroy it. The salt water, the UV, the humidity, the constant movement and flexing and loading of every component every single day. And it starts asking for your attention immediately. The bilge pump that cycles twice before breakfast, the shore power connection that starts running warm, the raw water strainer that needs cleaning more often than the manual suggested, the teak that needs oiling before it dries out and cracks, the canvas that developed a small tear that will become a large tear if it is not addressed this weekend. None of these are emergencies, but they arrive in a stream that never fully stops. For people who enjoy working with their hands, who find satisfaction in understanding systems and solving problems, this rhythm becomes one of the things they love most about the life. It gives them purpose. It teaches them things. It connects them to the boat in a way that deepens the experience. For people who wanted freedom from maintenance, who moved aboard specifically to simplify their life and reduce their responsibilities, the reality feels like the opposite of what they came for. By the 6-month mark, they are not living on a boat. They are managing one. And that distinction turns out to matter enormously. The honest question to ask yourself before you commit is not whether you can handle maintenance. It is whether you genuinely enjoy it, because on a boat the maintenance never stops. And the people who thrive are the ones who stopped thinking of it as a burden somewhere along the way. The second reason is quieter. It builds slowly, and by the time most people recognize it, it has already made the decision for them. The isolation is different than they expected. Here is the thing about marina life that most content about it gets wrong. It is presented as either deeply communal The warm village of like-minded souls all living the same unconventional dream, or romantically solitary, just you and the water and the peace. The reality is more complicated than either version. Yes, the marina community is real. The dock neighbors who check on each other, help with lines in a storm, show up with tools when a repair gets complicated. That part is genuinely true, and most liveaboards describe it as one of the unexpected gifts of this life. But the community is also small and fixed, and your social world, if the marina becomes your primary social environment, shrinks in ways that happen gradually enough that you do not notice until one day you realize you have not had a real conversation with someone outside the dock in longer than you can remember. For people who had rich social lives on land, book clubs, dinner parties, neighborhood friendships, colleagues, family nearby, the contraction of that social world can be deeply disorienting. The boat does not naturally replace those connections. It offers different ones. And for some people, that difference turns out to be more significant than they anticipated. There is also a specific kind of isolation that comes from being misunderstood by the people you love. Family members who do not understand the choice, friends who found it charming for the first few months and then quietly stopped engaging with it. The subtle social friction of having made a decision that falls outside the script most people around you are following. The liveaboard life asks you to be genuinely comfortable with your own choices in a way that not everyone is prepared for. And at the 6-month mark, when the novelty has worn off and the reality has settled in, that comfort either solidifies into something real or it starts to crack. Number 3 is the one that nobody talks about because it feels too small to admit. The space. Not the inconvenience of a smaller space. The actual psychological experience of living in it. In the research phase, 35 or 40 feet of boat sounds manageable. You tour the vessel. You look at the layout. You think about what you will keep and what you will sell. And it all makes sense on paper. You have seen the photos. You know it is small. You believe you are prepared. Then you live in it. For a week it is charming. For a month it is an adventure. For 3 months it is your new normal. Around month 4 or 5, for some people, something begins to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in small accumulated moments that start to add up. The awareness of where everything is, because there are only so many places anything can be. The particular choreography required when 2 people are moving around the galley at the same time. The absence of a room you can close a door to. The fact that every sound the boat makes is audible from everywhere aboard. The knowledge that when you want to be completely alone, there is nowhere on the boat that is more than 30 feet from where you started. For people with certain temperaments, people who genuinely need physical space to decompress, to think, to be fully alone, the boat eventually stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like confinement. This is not a character flaw. It is a genuine compatibility question. Some people are wired for small intentional spaces. Others are not. And the 6-month mark is roughly when the answer to that question becomes undeniable. The people who stay are usually the ones who discovered something unexpected. That the boat eventually stops feeling small, that the water around it becomes the extension of the space, the open horizon that makes 35 feet feel like it has no walls at all. But reaching that shift takes time, and not everyone makes it there before the doubt wins. Number 4 is the practical one, the one that shows up on a spreadsheet rather than in a feeling. The money did not work out the way they planned. This one is specific, and it is worth being direct about. The liveaboard dream is frequently sold, including sometimes by channels like this one, as a dramatically lower cost of living than conventional housing. And for many people in high-cost cities, that is genuinely true. The math can absolutely work in your favor. But the math has conditions. Slip fees in desirable locations run $1,000 to $2,500 per month before the liveaboard surcharge and the electricity charges. Annual haul-outs and bottom paint run $1,500 to $4,000. Marine labor rates run $150 to $200 an hour. Unexpected repairs, and there are always unexpected repairs, do not come with a predictable price tag for people who ran the numbers during the research phase without fully accounting for all of these costs. The 6-month reality can be a genuine financial shock, not ruinous, but significantly different from the projection. There is also a subtler financial pressure that is harder to anticipate. The constant low-level drain of the boat, always needing something. Not one big expense. 50 small ones, the impeller, the zincs, the dock lines that finally gave out, the canvas repair that could not wait. Each one is manageable. Together over 6 months, they accumulate into a number that surprises people who did not budget for them specifically. The people who make it through this phase are usually the ones who went in with a realistic contingency budget, a dedicated fund for the unexpected that they committed to before they needed it. The people who leave are often the ones who went in with optimistic numbers and ran out of runway before the life had a chance to reveal its better qualities. Number 5 is the one that is hardest to explain to someone who has not experienced it. Weather becomes an adversary, not always, not even usually. But at the 6-month mark, most liveaboards have lived through at least one extended period of difficult weather. And the way a person responds to that experience turns out to be one of the clearest indicators of whether they are built for this life. A week of rain on a boat is not like a week of rain in a house. In a house, rain is background noise. On a boat, rain is present. It is on the hull around you. It is in the condensation on the interior surfaces. It is in the sound of water finding the one seam that was not perfectly sealed. It is in the humidity that climbs inside the cabin and settles into everything soft. A sustained wind event at night is different on a boat. The motion, the sound of lines under load, the particular alertness that does not fully release even when you know intellectually that everything is fine. Some people find their nervous system never fully adapts to this. They lie awake. They check things they already checked. They feel responsible for the boat in a way that does not allow them to rest. And then there is the weather preoccupation that never fully switches off. Liveaboards check forecasts constantly, not out of anxiety, but out of genuine necessity. Weather is directly relevant to their home. But for people who came to this life seeking peace and simplicity, the constant background monitoring of wind and tide and barometric pressure can start to feel like its own kind of stress. By the 6-month mark, people have a clear sense of how their nervous system responds to all of this. Some have discovered a resilience they did not know they had. Others have discovered a hard limit they cannot push past. Neither discovery is a failure. Both are important. Number 6 is the one that never appears on any list like this, which is exactly why it belongs here. They achieved what they came for, and then they wanted something different. This one requires a moment because it is genuinely counterintuitive. Some people quit boat life after 6 months, not because it failed them, but because it worked. They came aboard carrying something: stress, grief, a chapter of life that needed closing, a version of themselves they needed to leave behind. The boat gave them the space and the simplicity and the reset they were looking for. And at the 6-month mark, they looked up from the water and realized the work was done. They were not running from anything anymore, and what they wanted now was something the boat was not designed to give them: a garden, a grandchild close by, a community rooted in geography rather than a dock, the particular kind of stability that a fixed address provides when the season of your life calls for it. These people do not regret the boat. Most of them talk about it as one of the most clarifying experiences of their lives. They learned something about themselves that they could not have learned any other way. They carried that learning back to land and built something different with it. The boat was not the destination. It was the passage, and now the reason that sits underneath all the others. The one that does not get its own category because it is present in every category. They were not ready for who the boat would ask them to become. This life has a way of removing the things that most of us use to avoid ourselves. The busyness, the social calendar, the endless consumption of things and entertainment and distraction. When you strip all of that away and put a person on a 35-foot boat in a marina with the water moving gently under the hull and nowhere in particular to be, what remains is just the person, and that is more confronting than most people anticipate. The boat asks questions that land-based life rarely forces you to face directly. What do I actually need? What was I avoiding? What does a good day genuinely look like for me when nobody is watching and there is nothing to perform? Who am I when the markers I used to measure myself with, the house, the car, the career title, the square footage, are no longer available? Some people discover the answers to those questions and find them liberating. The boat becomes the most honest home they have ever had. Others find the questions themselves too uncomfortable to sit with, not because they are bad people or wrong for this life in some permanent way, but because the timing was not right, because there was more unfinished business on land than they had accounted for, because the version of freedom they were looking for was something the water could not provide. The people who quit at 6 months are often the ones who needed more time to be ready, not more time on the boat, more time in the life that came before it. And sometimes the most courageous thing a person can do is recognize that honestly and act on it. So there they are. The real reasons some people quit boat life after 6 months. The maintenance that never stops and starts to feel like a second job. The isolation that is different than the brochure promised. The space that some nervous systems eventually cannot make peace with. The financial reality that surprised them. The weather that their body refused to adapt to. The chapter that was complete before they expected it to be. And the deepest reason of all, the confrontation with themselves that the boat made unavoidable. None of these are reasons not to try this life. They are reasons to go in with honest eyes, because here is what is also true. For every single one person who left at 6 months, there are people who hit those walls and pushed through them, who found the maintenance rhythm satisfying, who built a marina community that became the richest social life they had ever known, who stopped noticing the size of the boat because the water around it felt infinite, who ran the real numbers and found a way to make them work, who lay awake in a wind event and then went back to sleep and eventually stopped waking up at all. Those people will tell you, unprompted, without hesitation, that getting to the other side of the 6-month wall is where the real life begins. The boat does not promise easy. It promises real. And for the people it is right for, that turns out to be exactly enough. Now I want to hear from you. Which one of these reasons resonated most? Whether you are considering this life, living it right now, or tried it and came back to land, your perspective belongs in this conversation. Drop it in the comments. These are genuinely some of the most interesting conversations on this channel, and I read every single one. If this video gave you a more honest picture of what this decision actually involves, hit the like button. It helps this channel reach more people who are asking the same questions you are. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We are going to keep making videos that take the Liveaboard life seriously. The dream and the reality both. The water is right there. Whether it is right for you is the only question that matters. See you in the next one.